Real World Computer Programming for Kids. Step 27. Steps on Stepping and BREAKPOINT Bonanza Part 3. Welcome back. Where were we? Let me think. We were examining the code to see why the value of multiple choice class index is off by 1. And then in the newsletter you would see a Hairby Dragons image. Note, the off by 1 error is very common in programming. Part of it is because of the confusion caused by the first element of anything, a list, items in a combo box, etc., being located at index 0, not index 1, as normal people, non-programmers, would typically expect. Even if you remember to start at 0, you might forget that the last index needs to be decremented by 1, or you will end up trying to access something that doesn't exist. For example, say you are looping through a list or a collection or array that contains 314 items. If you tried looping through the list this way, and it shows a code example, what this for loop is saying is assign the int variable I the integer 0, show that value in a message box. The first time it will show 0, etc. Increment the value of I so that it is now 1. Repeat the process until and including when I has become 314. That would work fine the first 313 times. But then it would fail on the last time through, as sumList.count is 314, but that is accessed when the value of the int variable I is 313, not 314. The 314 items in the list are accessed by using index values from 0 to 313 for 314 items, not from 1 to 314. And if you started I at 1 instead of 0, not only would it still blow up in the end, but it would also skip the first or 0th item and start with the second one. A handy way to bypass this potential problem altogether is to use a for each construct instead. The above would be when using a for each loop instead of a for loop, and it shows that code. The compiler is smart enough to know, meaning it has been programmed by a human to work right, to translate this as, do the following with every integer in some list, starting at 0, naturally, and ending with the last item, which is, naturally, the count less 1. So the for each loop basically converts it into the following for loop, showing sumList.count minus 1 as being the end of the road for the for loop. Just as Visual Studio helps us with our programming chores, the C# language helps us too with constructs such as for each. Alrighty then, back to our specific challenge. When the code examines the answer to the first question selected from among the radio buttons, it's comparing the answer selected by the user to the class instance's correct answer member's value at index 1 of the list, instead of looking at index 0 as it should be doing. In other words, the value of multiple choice class index is 1 when it should be 0, and so it's saying a correct answer is wrong because it's comparing apples to orange sherbet, so to speak. So let's see where in the code multiple choice class index is being assigned a value and see if we can figure out what's causing the problem, or at least form a decent theory about what it might be so that we can test the theory. Note, when you debug, you are using the scientific method. That is to say, you observe what's happening, then you form a theory based on your observations, and then you test your theory. If your theory is right, great, you're done. But if your first theory is wrong, you look longer and harder and develop another theory and test that until you finally reach a sound, provable conclusion. Here are the assignments to multiple choice class index. 1, at its declaration, when the app starts up, it is assigned -1. 2, and it shows that code. 2, in the update the form method, which is called when a file is selected from the combo box, so once per CSV file, and after each question is answered when the next button is clicked. Multiple choice class index is incremented, and it shows the code where that happens. 3, it is also incremented when the last question is reached in the combo box's checked changed event handler, and it shows that code. But this bug is showing up long before we are on the last question, so that's probably not the culprit. Nevertheless, just to be on the safe side, I'll put a breakpoint in each place. Note, in programming, you will learn to code safely, or as it's usually called, defensively. You may sometimes feel that the extra caution you take in coding defensively is akin to wearing both a belt and suspenders, but coding defensively is kind of like driving defensively, being aware of and ready to react to all the unexpected things that might take place. Another motorist or a squirrel pulling out in front of you, a truck, watermelon seed squeezing a rock from its tire up into your windshield, a motorcyclist or a pedestrian showing up out of nowhere, a meteorite falling out of the sky and bouncing off your head, etc. You can never be too careful. In fact, we will eventually go back and sprinkle try finally and try catch blocks throughout the code, in the places where we haven't put them already, just to be on the what side? The defensive programming side. Now I'll run the app again to see what in Kingdom Come is going on here. Okay, so it's just as you, no doubt, suspected. The update the form method is being called twice before answer is correct is called. So the update the form method increments multi-choice class index twice, first taking it from -1 to 0, and then from 0 to 1. So to be clear, the update the form method is called twice on the first question only, after the file is selected, and again after the next button is clicked. After that, it is called only after the next button is clicked. So we will have to put some special case code in the update the form method to not increment the value on only that one specific occasion. So we will try this. And it shows the code with some code added to look for this scenario and prevent the problem from happening. So we are only incrementing multi-choice class index the first time through by looking to see if it's set to -1, which it is at first, and only then incrementing it by setting it explicitly to 0 on that occasion, rather than increment. After that, multi-choice class index is only incremented after at least one question has been answered, which will not be true the first time through, but will be true every time after that. So now, multi-choice class index is only incremented once each question. That's what we want. So this change should solve the problem or bug. Let's see. I'll run the app again. It does squash the bug. However, you know about however, there is a minor glitch remaining. Probably more than one, but we can at least hope it's only one more. When I move on to the next question, one of the radio buttons is selected. They should all be unselected when a new question and set of candidate answers are displayed after the form is updated. Sometimes you feel like Don Quixote, tilting at windmills when you chase down these phantoms. The hunter becomes the hunted, and you get walloped by a bug that keeps evading you until it whips around and whacks you upside the head, just like the windmill blades did to poor old Don when he was trying to vanquish them. And it shows an image of Don Quixote being whacked by a windmill blade. So let's look at the code again to see where the problem might be. The checked property of the 3 radio buttons should be zeroed out, changed to false at the start of a new question. The obvious place for this to be done is when new values, text values that is, are assigned to those same radio buttons. But that wasn't being done, as you can see here in this portion of the update the form method, and it shows that code where values are assigned to the text property of the radio buttons. So I changed it to this, and it's the same code but with 3 added lines where each radio button's checked property is set to false. Time to run the app again. Can you guess what the next problem or bug is going to be? I can't, but I'm dying to find out. So I put the app through its paces again, and it's actually much better now. But there is another anomaly, which is a euphemism for bug. This screenshot tells the story. When your program isn't acting as it should and you take a picture of it, it is a screenshot. Otherwise, it is a normal screenshot. And it shows that. This is the 10th and final question. All is good except one thing. On selecting the last answer, the percentage label didn't update. It should have gone to 80% 8 of 10, and the next button should have remained disabled. It's acting as if it is any other question, not the special final question, which is supposed to freeze the controls so that the selection is locked in and the next button cannot be pressed or clicked. At that point, the user should only be able to do 2 things: select another CSV file from the combo box or exit the app. So, the code that is supposed to determine that this is the last question must be failing. We have to examine the code to see why. Let's look at the freeze check code, which is in the event handler that is shared by all 3 radio buttons. In other words, whenever a radio button is clicked or checked, this code runs, and then it shows that code. As you can see by the comment in the code, the first line should equate to true when we're on the last question. Let's see if that is the case, and if not, why not? I put a breakpoint there on that first line inside the event handler. When I got to the last question, the values weren't what I was expecting. Besides that, looking at it anew, it doesn't seem to quite make sense. So I changed this, and it shows the code as it was, to this, and it shows the updated code. In other words, I changed number of questions -1 to number of questions, and I changed multiple choice class index +1 to multiple choice class index. We are in the area of the off by 1 logic problems here. Changing the last might seem strange. How it was formerly might make more sense to you. But the thought is that multiple choice class index has now been incremented beyond where it should be. It is at 10 and is no longer a valid index value. But the app is still acting the same way. It isn't keeping the next button disabled, and it's not updating the percentage label. Dad burn it. Dad burn it is the official cuss phrase of programmers everywhere. What to do in a situation like this when it feels as if you're bashing your head against the wall and your nice logical app is seemingly morphed into a Rube Goldberg machine? And it shows a picture of a Rube Goldberg toy. Take a break. Really. It's not a cop-out to take a break, nor is it a robber-out. You can actually save time in the long run, solve the problem quicker, by giving yourself an airing and giving your brain a reset. Otherwise, there is a danger of just staying stuck in the same old mindset and not being able to see new avenues to explore. Coming back at a problem after at least a few minutes away from it can often lead to an aha moment where you say to yourself, well, why didn't I think of that before? Or, it's obvious that's wrong. What was I thinking? And of course, this applies to other things besides programming too. We'll soon dive into a couple of tricks and techniques using tools that can help us when trying to trace out what is happening in our code, logging, and why something is no longer working that formerly did, code comparison tools. But that's for later. And one that will help us preventively fix bugs before they're even noticed, code analyzers. For now, take a break, and we'll get back at it and take another stab at it next time. Until then.